Blackouts are becoming more common across the United States. Not in every state, not all the time, but the trend is clear. Some regions see them more often than others, and understanding why that happens can help you prepare in ways that actually make sense for where you live. This isn't about predicting disaster or telling you the grid is about to collapse. It's about looking at infrastructure stress, weather patterns, and where demand consistently pushes up against supply. Because when you know what's normal for your region, you can plan for it the same way you'd plan for any other seasonal challenge. So today, we're walking through 13 states where blackouts are more likely in 2026, what's driving that likelihood, and what it actually means for you if you live there or know people who do. Before we get into specific states, let's talk about why this is happening more broadly. The electric grid in the United States wasn't designed for the way we use power today. A lot of the infrastructure is decades old. At the same time, we're using more electricity than ever before, especially during extreme weather. Air conditioning during heat waves, heating during cold snaps, and the general increase in devices we all rely on daily. Add to that the fact that weather itself is becoming less predictable. We're seeing longer heat waves, more intense winter storms, heavier rainfall, and stronger winds. Each of these puts stress on a system that was built for different conditions. But here's what's important to understand. Most blackouts are localized and temporary. When we talk about states being more likely to face outages, we're usually talking about regional events that last hours to a few days, not weeks or months. It's not about living in the dark. It's about being ready for interruptions that are increasingly part of the picture. Where you live doesn't change whether you should prepare. It changes how. And that's what this is really about. Let's start in California. This one probably isn't a surprise. California has faced rolling blackouts and public safety power shutoffs in recent years, and the reasons are layered. You've got high electricity demand, especially during heat waves. You've got an aging grid in some areas, and you've got wildfire risk, which has led utilities to proactively shut off power during high wind events to prevent sparks from igniting fires. That last part is key. In California, some outages aren't failures, they're intentional. But that doesn't make them less disruptive. If you live in California, especially in areas prone to wildfires or extreme heat, preparation means having a plan for multi-day outages that might happen with short notice during specific seasons. Texas is next, and the reasons here are different. Texas runs its own grid, mostly independent from the rest of the country. That gives the state flexibility. But it also means there's less backup when demand spikes or supply drops. We saw this dramatically in 2021 during the winter storm that left millions without power. But heat is also a factor. Summer demand in Texas regularly pushes the grid to its limits. The takeaway for Texas isn't that the grid is broken. It's that the state experiences extreme weather on both ends, and the system is sometimes stretched thin. If you're in Texas, preparing for both summer and winter outages makes sense. Moving to the southwest, Arizona faces challenges similar to California but with its own wrinkles. Extreme heat is the main driver. Phoenix and other cities regularly see temperatures above 110 degrees, and air conditioning isn't optional in that kind of heat. It's a survival tool. When everyone runs AC at the same time, the grid works hard to keep up. Arizona also relies partly on power generated elsewhere and transmitted in, which adds another layer of dependency. If you're in Arizona, summer is your high-risk season. Preparation there means staying cool without power and knowing how to manage heat safely. Nevada deals with many of the same issues as Arizona. Las Vegas and Reno both see intense summer heat, and the state's population has grown quickly over the past couple decades. More people means more demand. Nevada also shares some grid infrastructure with neighboring states, which can be helpful, but also means regional issues can ripple across borders. If you live in Nevada, think of blackout prep the same way you'd think about summer heat prep. They're connected. Louisiana faces a completely different set of challenges. Hurricanes are the primary driver here. Louisiana sits on the Gulf Coast, and hurricane season brings the risk of widespread outages caused by wind damage, flooding, and storm surge. These outages can last longer than heat-related or cold-related ones because they involve physical damage to infrastructure, not just demand overload. If you're in Louisiana, your prep timeline is tied to hurricane season. June through November is when you need to be ready, and the focus should be on longer duration outages and the secondary effects like heat, water access, and communication. Florida is similar but even more widespread in terms of risk. The entire state is vulnerable to hurricanes, and the peninsula shape means storms can hit from multiple directions. Florida also has intense summer heat and afternoon thunderstorms that can knock out local power. And because Florida has a large population, especially along the coasts, the impact of outages affects millions of people. For Florida residents, preparation is year-round, but intensifies during hurricane season. And because outages can range from a few hours to a few weeks depending on storm severity, layering your prep makes sense. Short-term basics first, then deeper provisions if you're in a high-risk zone. North Carolina might not come to mind immediately, but it belongs on this list. The state gets hit by hurricanes and tropical storms, especially along the coast. Inland areas face severe thunderstorms and occasionally ice storms in winter. North Carolina also has a mix of urban and rural areas, and rural grids tend to take longer to repair after damage. If you're in North Carolina, your risks vary by region. Coastal areas should prep like Florida and Louisiana. Inland areas should think about summer storms and winter ice. South Carolina is right next door and shares a lot of the same vulnerabilities. Hurricanes, tropical storms, summer heat, and aging infrastructure in some areas all contribute. The state has seen significant outages during major storms in recent years, and recovery can take time, especially in areas with older grid components. South Carolina residents should follow similar logic to North Carolina. Know what threatens your specific area and prepare accordingly. Georgia rounds out the southeast cluster. Hurricanes can reach Georgia, though they're usually weaker by the time they arrive. But summer's storms, tornadoes, and heat are all factors. Atlanta and other urban areas have high demand, and rural areas face longer repair times when outages happen. If you live in Georgia, the most likely scenario is a localized outage caused by storms. That usually means shorter duration, but it can still disrupt your day or weekend. Let's shift to the Midwest. Illinois might surprise some people, but the state faces stress from both heat and cold. Chicago and other cities see hot, humid summers where AC demand spikes. Winters bring bitter cold and ice storms. The grid has to handle both extremes, and sometimes it struggles. Illinois also has a lot of older infrastructure, particularly in rural areas. If you live in Illinois, preparation should account for both summer and winter with particular attention to heating and cooling without power. Michigan deals with similar challenges but leans more heavily into winter risk. Ice storms and heavy snow can bring down power lines and delay repairs. Summers are generally milder, but severe thunderstorms still happen. Michigan also has a mix of urban and rural populations, and rural outages tend to last longer. If you're in Michigan, winter prep is the priority. Staying warm without power is a different challenge than staying cool, and it requires different tools and planning. Wisconsin is another cold weather state where winter storms drive outage risk. Blizzards, ice, and extreme cold all stress the system. Wisconsin's grid is generally reliable, but when severe weather hits, outages can last longer in rural or northern areas. For Wisconsin residents, think about winter survival skills. Heating, water access, and freezing temperatures, and safe food storage all matter more when it's below zero outside. Finally, let's talk about New York. The state has a dense population in New York City and surrounding areas, which means high demand. But upstate New York is more rural and faces winter storms, ice, and wind. The state has invested heavily in grid resilience, but no system is immune to extreme weather. If you live in New York, your preparation depends on where you are. Urban areas might see shorter, more frequent disruptions. Rural areas might see longer outages during winter storms. So, that's the list. 13 states where blackouts are more likely in 2026 based on infrastructure, weather, and demand patterns. But again, this doesn't mean constant outages. It means a higher likelihood of short to medium disruptions. And in most cases, those disruptions are manageable if you've thought ahead. A lot of people ask what to actually do during a real outage, especially in apartments or small homes where space and options are limited. I put together a simple 72-hour blackout guide that walks through exactly what fails first, what to do in the first hour, and how to stay comfortable without overthinking it. It's linked below if you want something practical to lean on. But whether you grab that guide or not, here's what matters most. The first 15 minutes after the power goes out are the most important. That's when you make decisions that set the tone for everything else. Do you know where your flashlight is? Do you have water you can access without power? Can you charge your phone? Those aren't complicated questions, but if you haven't thought about them before the lights go out, you'll spend that first 15 minutes scrambling, and that's when stress sets in. Water is the first thing to think about. Most of us assume water will keep flowing, even if the power is out, and often it does, but not always. Municipal water systems rely on electric pumps. If the outage is widespread or lasts long enough, water pressure can drop or stop. So having water stored, even just a few gallons per person, gives you breathing room. Light is next. Candles work, but they're not ideal for safety reasons. Flashlights and battery-powered lanterns are better. Headlamps are even better because they free up your hands. You don't need expensive gear. You just need something reliable that you've tested before you need it. Phone power matters more than most people realize. Your phone is your connection to information, to loved ones, and to emergency services if needed. A small battery pack that stays charged can keep your phone alive for days. That one piece of gear solves a lot of problems. Beyond that, think about temperature control. If it's summer and you're in a hot state, you need a plan to stay cool. If it's winter and you're in a cold state, you need a plan to stay warm. Both of those challenges are solvable, but they require different tools and strategies. Food usually isn't the immediate concern people think it is. Most of us have enough food in the house to last several days, even without refrigeration. The key is knowing what to eat first. If the fridge goes out, eat the perishables, then move to shelf-stable items. In most short-term outages, food isn't the crisis point. What people underestimate is boredom and morale. When the power is out, all the things we normally do to pass time disappear. No TV, no internet, no devices unless they're charged. That's when stress creeps in, especially for kids. Having a plan for how to spend time during an outage, whether it's books, games, or just conversation, makes a bigger difference than you'd think. And here's something I want to emphasize. Calm decision-making is your biggest asset. Power outages feel disruptive because they interrupt our routines, but they're rarely dangerous if you've prepared even a little. The moment you realize the power is out, take a breath, check on the people around you, figure out what you need in the next few hours, not the next few days. Then act. Panic doesn't help. Planning does. If you live in one of the states we talked about today, this isn't about living in fear. It's about recognizing the patterns in your region and building a small buffer of readiness that fits your life. If you're in an apartment, your prep looks different than someone in a house. If you're on a tight budget, you prioritize differently, but everyone can do something. And the thing about preparedness is that it compounds. The first time you think through what you do during a blackout, it feels like a lot. The second time, it's easier. By the third time, it's just part of how you operate. That's the goal. Not to become obsessed with worst-case scenarios, but to build a baseline of readiness that makes you more resilient no matter what happens. Whether you're in California dealing with wildfire shutoffs, Texas managing extreme weather on both ends, Louisiana preparing for hurricane season, or Michigan getting ready for winter storms, the principles are the same. Know what threatens your area. Prepare for the most likely scenario first. Start small and build from there. This doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be intentional. If you want more detail on what to do hour by hour during a blackout, that 72-hour guide I mentioned earlier breaks it all down in a way that's simple and realistic. It's built for normal people in normal spaces, not for bunkers or big budgets. You'll find the link in the description. But even without that, you now know more than most people about why blackouts happen where they do and what the real risks are. That's the first step. The second step is taking action. Even if it's just filling a few water bottles or finding a flashlight you know works. Because at the end of the day, preparedness isn't about being perfect. It's about being ready enough that when something happens, you don't have to panic. You just handle it. If this was helpful, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what your biggest concern is when it comes to power outages. I read every comment, and it helps me know what to cover next. And if you're not subscribed yet, consider doing that. We're building something here. A community of people who want to be ready without the fear, the hype, or the nonsense. Just practical information you can actually use. Thanks for being here. Stay prepared, stay calm, and I'll see you in the next one.